Welcome back to PLS 510, Forage Management and Utilization. Today we're going to take up another section of the variety lectures, and this one is going to be looking at the value of better varieties. So let's get started. I'd remind you first off that we have quite a bit of data to work from when we're trying to make that variety decision, and we're going to take a look at several of these, but I would just, this is a copy or a little clip out of our long-term summary of Kentucky variety testing, and you can see that we have got a variety, that's a pun, we got a lot of information that we can choose from in order from which to make a decision about varieties, and that makes that process much easier. So, just as an overview to talk about why we use varieties or why we would choose a variety, what are we looking for? And one of the trade-offs here is that when you are making that decision or you're consulting, somebody's asking you about a variety, in their mind, it is a price relationship. Is the performance going to offset the extra costs? And that's what you're trying to figure out in your mind. And what are the performance things that we're going to have to pull from to say what the value is? Well, one of them, the upper right-hand corner, yield and persistence. And the big one, of course, is yield. I mean, it's hard there's very few traits that are worth giving up much yield for. And persistence, because obviously the longer something lasts, the longer you can spread out the costs. And that's beneficial, and you don't have to then reestablish it, and that down year, that establishment year, is quite costly. There are some other traits that we would talk about. You could talk about resistance to particular diseases that you may be aware that you have, or just in general. And then in particular, I want to talk a little bit about the special case of grazing tolerance, but there's some other traits too, like tolerance to traffic, Roundup Ready trait, which is of course a GMO trait, and then there we have some altered lignin type products too. But let's dig in here a little bit more about improved varieties. I would like to walk through one example to bring up a couple of points about making a decision about should you make a change and go to an improved variety. And one of the biggest jumps that we might make is trying to convert, in this example, 100 acres of toxic tall fescue to novel endophyte tall fescue. I chose 100 acres because that, in round figures, can carry 50 cows, and therefore we can talk about how many calves that might mean on either system and so on. So that 100 acres of toxic tall fescue will carry 50 cows, make 35 calves, assuming a 70% conception rate, and we'll just pick a figure of 500-pound weaning weight. The 70% conception may be high, may be low, but certainly I'm discounting that toxic fescue on conception rate because that's one of the negative effects. So if we're going to convert, then we've got to total up some costs here. We've got 4 quarts of Roundup plus the application costs at about $50 an acre times 100 acres is $5,000. If I use 25 pounds of seed per acre plus the cost of drilling, that's $100. At $4 a pound. I was trying to figure out where the $100 came from. The 25 pounds times $4 a pound roughly for the seed is $100 plus $20 for drilling. So that comes out to be $120 per acre, or $12,000 across the whole site. But the biggie I want to make you aware of, and we seldom take it into account, is the fact that when you have to change over, completely reestablish a field, there's going to be 1 year where you've got to forego product from that acreage or that field. Now, you may get something off of it. You may be able to get a cutting of hay, but I'm going to use the example where we take it out of production 100%. So that 100 acres would have given you 35 calves in an average year at 500 pounds apiece, and I'm going to use $1.50 a pound at sale and that's $26,250 production that we lose to reestablish, okay? So you add those three together, that comes up to be, well, $43,250, which is a stunning number, or about $432 per acre. So that's the cost side. So let's look at the benefit side. There's that novel tall fescue, 100 acres, carrying those same 50 cows. The benefits, 10 extra calves, moving up to 90% conception versus 70. So I got 10 times that 500-pound calf times $1.50. So I've got $7,500 more in calf product to sell. Now we also know that we're going to get a bump in weaning weight. So for all the calves that come off of that 100 acres, which is 45 calves, we're going to factor in 50 pounds more weaning weight times that $1.50, or about $33.75. Extra revenue then, extra calves, extra weight to sell, $10,875 per year, or $109 per acre. Now if you go back and look at the cost at $432 and the revenue benefit of $109 every year, obviously the payback is only going to come if you keep the fescue longer than 4.5 years or 5 years. So the important thing here is to note that when you're going to renovate a field and you've got to have a lot of upfront costs, you're going to need some time. That stand has got to last for you in order to pay the bills. Okay, I think that may be an extreme example of cost, and there may be a way around losing a whole year's worth of production on that 100 acres that you wouldn't have to carry that full cost of $26,250. But at any rate, it is at least one way to approach the economics of it. And without a doubt, you have to account for the fact that they're having to redo a field means that you will have the cost of losing some production in the interim. So can you afford to replace toxic tall fescue with novel endophyte tall fescue? Well, obviously you can, but there are certain things that you need to know going in, and that is that the upfront costs are going to be quite a bit, and then you're going to have to keep that stand producing for a number of years, which you would want to do anyway, but you're going to have to keep it producing in order to make the economics work out. Let's take a look at a red clover example, and this is a picture of me quite a long time ago. On the left is a 5 by 15 foot plot of common medium red clover, unimproved variety unknown red clover, and on the right is one of the improved certified varieties. And this would have been in the third spring. If we seed the first spring, we seeded this April of 2020, this picture would have been taken April of 2023. So that that third year's production is what we've been seeking with red clover, and you can see we're going to get at least a good first cutting out of the certified variety. But let's take a look a little more at what we've done to tease out the value there of those better varieties. What we did, and really at the urging, or not at the urging, but we had producers asking us, what is it really worth to seed the better varieties of red clover compared to the commons or the inexpensive material that most dealers will carry? The way we couldn't really answer that question because we didn't have those inexpensive products in our trials. So we began to put them in the trials, and in this table, they are listed down at the bottom, Common X and Common Z, and they're down there because they are on this 3-year study. They're at the very bottom of the list. Now I want to point out a couple of other things. Look at the difference between Kenland certified and Kenland uncertified. Over 3 years, it's a ton a year or more difference, and that's you could argue it should be similar production, but that's the difference between having known genetics, Kenland certified, versus uncertified Kenland, which obviously is not the same. And cinnamon at the time when I made this slide, which is some time ago, was one of the very best varieties that we had available. It was from southern states, and it certainly was a consistent performer. This is another table showing much the same thing. You've got Common X, Common Y, Common Z. They're at the bottom. you got Kinland certified and cinnamon at the top of the trial, significantly better at the end of that 3-year total. And we've even gone to the extremes of putting, trying to get several commons all at one time from different sources across the state. And these we would just get from vendors. We would go in and we would just buy or ask for a small amount or a pound or two of these, their variety not stated, basically their bargain brand red clover, and compared it to, I'm going to say, the good stuff. There's an interesting thing to note here. Obviously, common K at the bottom of the list is not very good. In fact, it was gone from the stand here in 2004 when this was rated. But look at common F at the top. It yielded as well as Kinland breeder seed, which is basically the high quality, same as certified seed. All right, so it yielded as well and was in stand pretty much equal to the best. The common was in stand equal to Kinland. So which brings up the point, or it makes the point that it's not always easy to say, oh well, all the commons are bad. They may not be. But the problem is you don't know if you're going to get this one, common F, which is terrific, or common K, which is quite weak. So when we've done this study or done these analyses over time, and we know that the yield advantage of better clovers over common or uncertified Kinland can be as much as 6,000 to 12,000 pounds more yield per acre over the life of the stand, and it gave better persistence as well. One of the things you need to recognize that even, that certified Kinland is quite old, and compared to cinnamon, which is a newer variety, or at least it was probably 50 years newer genetics, you can see that there have been some improvements in things like powdery mildew resistance, which you can see quite clearly here, certified Kinland on the left and cinnamon on the right. So that brings me to the close of at least this first section of the value of better varieties. So we'll sign off here, and we'll take up the last half of this lecture in our next session. Thank you.